Welcome to the way back for your bite of history. Picture this. The year is 1773 and the American colonies are a bubbling pot of unrest. We're in the midst of a tumultuous era, a time when the relationship between the American colonies and Britain is strained to breaking point. 2 decades prior, in the mid-1750s, the 7 Years' War had left Britain financially drained, and the Crown saw its American colonies as a promising source of revenue to replenish its coffers. The result? A series of heavy taxes imposed on the colonies, much to the chagrin of the colonists. The first of these, the Stamp Act of 1765, was met with vehement opposition. It required that many printed materials in the colonies be produced on stamped paper produced in London, carrying an embossed revenue stamp. From legal documents to newspapers, the Stamp Act was far-reaching, invasive and deeply unpopular. So much so that it was repealed just a year later in 1766. However, the British government wasn't quite done yet. The very next year, in 1767, they introduced a series of measures known as the Townshend Acts. These acts imposed duties on glass, lead, paints, paper and tea imported into the colonies. The reaction? Widespread protests and boycotts of British goods, leading to the eventual repeal of the Townshend Acts in 1770. But there was a catch. While the other duties were removed, the tax on tea remained. This single decision sparked a whole new level of dissent. It led to a booming black market for smuggled Dutch tea, undercutting the British East India Company. The colonists, feeling the weight of unjust taxation without representation, was simmering with resentment. The stage was set for a rebellion. Little did anyone know that it would come in the form of tea. December 16, 1773, was a night like no other in Boston. It was a night of defiance, a night of rebellion, a night that would forever be etched into the annals of history as the Boston Tea Party. The day had started like any other, but as the sun began to set, an air of anticipation hung heavy over the city. At the heart of this anticipation was the Old South Meeting House, where a crowd of over 5,000 colonists had gathered. They were there to protest, to take a stand against the British Parliament and their recently imposed tea tax. Their message was simple yet powerful. No taxation without representation. As the meeting drew to a close, a group of men known as the Sons of Liberty made a decision. A decision that would set the stage for the night's events. They would march on the harbour and make their protest known in a way that could not be ignored. Under the cover of darkness, they set out. Disguised as Mohawk Indians to protect their identities, they moved with a singular purpose. Their destination? The 3 British ships docked at Griffin's Wharf, the Dartmouth, the Eleanor and the Beaver. One by one, they boarded the ships. The air was thick with tension, but the Sons of Liberty were undeterred. They had a mission, and they carried it out with unwavering resolve. With axes and hatchets in hand, they broke open the chests of tea and dumped them into the icy waters of the harbour. The tea, a symbol of British oppression, was swallowed up by the dark waters, a clear and unambiguous statement of defiance against the British rule. In a matter of hours, 342 chests of British tea were dumped into the harbour. The Boston Tea Party, as it would come to be known, was a success. The morning after the Boston Tea Party, the harbour was a mess of tea leaves. The dawn brought with it a scene of uncharacteristic chaos. The once pristine harbour was now afloat with the remnants of British tea, a sight that was both shocking and awe-inspiring. It was a sight of defiance, a reminder of the audacious act that had taken place the night before. For the British, the aftermath was a slap in the face, a blatant challenge to their authority. They were taken aback, their surprise evident in their initial response. The audacity of the American colonists had caught them off guard. They had expected dissent, yes, but not such a bold, rebellious display. Their shock quickly turned into anger, an anger that was soon channeled into action. The British government, feeling the sting of this unprecedented rebellion, retaliated with a series of measures that came to be known as the Coercive Acts. These acts were meant to punish the colonists for their defiance and to reassert British authority. They closed the Boston harbour, imposed martial law, and made other punitive changes that only served to fan the flames of rebellion further. On the other side, the American colonists were also grappling with the aftermath of their audacious act. There was a sense of triumph, of course, a sense of having stood up to a seemingly invincible authority. But there was also uncertainty, a deep-seated fear of what this act of defiance would bring about. The coercive acts only served to confirm their fears. But instead of cowering, they stood their ground, their resolve only strengthening with each punitive measure. The Boston Tea Party had been more than just an act of rebellion. It was a declaration of defiance, a challenge to the British authority that had been taken up by the American colonists. It had sent out a clear message, a message that was heard loud and clear across the Atlantic. The Boston Tea Party had made its mark, but the repercussions were far from over. The Boston Tea Party did not just result in a harbour full of tea, it sparked a revolution. Let's delve deeper into the significance of this historical event, shall we? The Boston Tea Party, as we know, was more than just a protest against the Tea Act. It was a turning point in the strained relationship between the American colonies and Britain. It was a crucial moment that marked the shift from peaceful protest to active resistance. Prior to the Boston Tea Party, the colonies had been voicing their concerns through petitions and boycotts. But the British government's refusal to acknowledge their grievances pushed them towards a more drastic course of action. The destruction of the tea was a bold statement of defiance against the perceived tyranny of the British Crown. This act of rebellion was a catalyst, rallying support for the American Revolution. It not only united the colonists against a common enemy, but also brought their plight to the attention of other nations. It was a clear message to the world that the American colonies were ready to fight for their rights and liberties. Moreover, the Boston Tea Party played a significant role in shaping the political ideology of the time. It sparked debates over the nature of government, the rights of the governed, and the limits of authority. The principles that emerged from these discussions, liberty, equality, and democracy, would go on to form the bedrock of the American political system. In essence, the Boston Tea Party was a turning point in the struggle for American independence. It marked the end of passive resistance and the beginning of active rebellion against British rule. It signaled the birth of a new nation, one ready to stand up against injustice and fight for its rights. So you see, the Boston Tea Party was more than just an act of rebellion against the Tea Act. It was a pivotal moment in the history of America, one that played a crucial role in shaping not only the future of the colonies, but also the course of world history. The Boston Tea Party was not just an act of rebellion, it was a declaration of the American spirit. More than 200 years later, the Boston Tea Party is not just a historical event, it's a symbol. Indeed, the Boston Tea Party has left a profound legacy, one that goes beyond textbooks and history classes. It's become a part of the American narrative, brewed into the very essence of the nation. The act of rebellion against unjust taxation is remembered as a powerful moment in the struggle for American independence, a testament to the spirit of freedom and defiance that still resonates today. Over the years, the Boston Tea Party has been commemorated and celebrated in various ways. One standout example is the Boston Tea Party Ships and Amper Museum. This floating museum, located on the Congress Street Bridge in Boston, Massachusetts, is a tribute to that transformative night in 1773. Here, visitors can relive the events that led up to the Tea Party and even participate in reenactments. The museum serves as a tangible reminder of the courage and conviction of those who stood up against oppression. Yet the legacy of the Boston Tea Party extends beyond museums and reenactments. It's also found its place in modern political discourse. The event has often been invoked as a symbol of protest against perceived governmental overreach. In fact, the name Tea Party was adopted by a significant political movement in the early 21st century, reflecting their own stance against what they viewed as excessive taxation and government intervention. But perhaps most importantly, the Boston Tea Party serves as a reminder of the power of collective action. It tells a story of how ordinary individuals, when united by a common cause, can stand up against injustice and fight for their rights. And so we come to see that the Boston Tea Party, an act of defiance against a tea tax, has brewed a legacy that continues to steep in the American psyche. It's a legacy that reminds us of the power of resistance, the value of liberty, and the indomitable spirit of the American people. Thank you for stopping by. See you again next time.